Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Airsoft podcast with the Headless Chicken Squad. I am the Don. This is episode 3, and we'll be right back after this short message.
Today's episode is brought to you by Fujin Airsoft. Fujin firmly believe that your loadout should be based on your needs and wants, and a firm investment that should last a lifetime based on your gameplay and the needs that you want to get from on the field.
Okay, welcome to episode 3, and each week we bring you the very best of the Airsoft world. We have promised that we will bring you the best guests, the best insights, and quite possibly everything that the Airsoft world has to offer, but all packaged into one amazing episode. Today, I have decided that we are going to look at the Airsoft world, not from individual players, not from your influencers, but from the other side of the high-vis jackets, and actually bring on board one of the most progressive site owners in the UK, based over in Oswestry. I'm delighted to be joined by Mr. Craig West of Rednal Combat. Hello, Craig, and thank you for joining me.
Evening. Thanks for having me.
No, you're more than welcome, mate. You're more than welcome. Pretty much as I said before we actually got the invitation sent out, I know that our guys have had amazing experiences when they come over seeing you, and one of the things that we've always said is it's just nice to see a site that's having time, effort, not necessarily money, but kind of passion and knowledge for the combat sports industry, and trying to make things good and all things bright and beautiful for ultimately the customers that are going to turn up and come and spend the day with you. And so yeah, you're very much deserving of being here, and I personally very much looking forward to what you've got to say. And I'll be honest with you, there's a few things on the other side of the fence that I'm sure I don't know, and we'll get to that in the questions as we go throughout the podcast. But why don't you introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about you and how you got started into the combat games world, so to speak.
Yeah, so we purchased the site back in 2019. Great timing, just before COVID. Predominantly a paintball site. The site's been there for roughly 20 years. When it first started, they had a little bit of airsoft with one of the previous owners, and I think that phased out as paintball became quite popular. Yeah, so then we've just been progressing since. And then over the last 2 years, we've been trying to implement the airsoft a little bit more. As most sites are now, they're trying to have multi activities rather than just being just a paintball site, for example. So yeah, we do multiple things there, and over the last 2 years, we've been trying to push this airsoft, which it's going well.
Okay. Good. I mean, before we get into the thing, one of the things that when I did my research for this episode last week, I don't know if you saw the episode, but we had Kicking Mustang on. And one of the questions that we asked him was, what does he want to see from an airsoft site? And one of the things that he said was he wanted something that was sort of overgrown, urban, stacked with history, good gameplay, good games, and obviously a good player pool, essentially. Now, I mean, I'll let you take the lead on this, but surely you can't get any better than a former RAF base stacked right in the middle of sort of the North Shropshire countryside, surely.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, we're lucky. We're lucky. So it was originally a World War II RAF training base. They trained Spitfire pilots there. And one of the main features of our site is the control tower. So, yeah, and there's various buildings knocking about. There's a original pillbox in one of the farmers' fields nearby that overlooks the site as well. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, cool. I'm like I say, I'm gutted I've not been a chance to see it yet, but quite a few of the Headless Chicken Squad are regulars there, I believe, and also when the guys that aren't necessarily regulars have been over, they've always come back with amazing feedback, and I can't congratulate you enough on that. So as we go through each section, obviously I'll ask a couple of different questions, and they're fairly open-ended, and obviously I'll come back to you with my sort of responses as we go through them, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. So Obviously, as a very naive player of Airsoft, I understand from a player point of view what the needs and wants of players are. And quite often we get thrown about, obviously, what FPS limits are, what the gels limits are, what sort of, we see how much we have to pay for a game day fee and things like that. But we don't really know from your side of the fence how much due process, insurance, legalities, all those sort of things go into it. So my first initial question, just to kind of get this started, just so everybody can kind of see how much effort goes into just putting a game day on. What are the legal processes and fixed overheads associated with running a site, or even getting a site up and running? Obviously, you said you took over in 2019.
Oh, yeah.
What's that landscape look like in terms of what you do and don't need to do to just get up and running?
Yeah, so we bought, obviously, a business that was failing to a degree. It was a paintball business. Previous owners had just let it run to ruin a little bit, so it needed some fresh input and a lot of money. So we purchased the business back in 2019, invested quite heavily since. Unfortunately, it's the land's owned by like a lord of the manor basically, and we pay a hefty fee for that. So for a year, we pay around about just over £20,000 for the rent on the land. That's inclusive of VAT, so it's roughly like £1,700 per month. Then insurance is obviously, this is just speaking from our point of view, can't speak for other sites, but our insurance is I don't know, around about 4,600 for the year. So it's quite a hefty amount. And then you've got other things, gas, electrics, it all adds up. And the difficulty here is as well with it, because of the nature of the sort of the game, it's basically a weekend business where, you've got to try and make as much as you can. And then so you have 8 days a month on average. So so you're looking at just our fixed overheads are just over £2,100 per month. So you've got to do that before anything else. And then, like you say, from a fee point of view for the guys coming, so say it was £30 for a game day. From that, then if you pay on card, we lose £1 straight away. The card fees are you just lose that straight away, and then VAT and taxes. From a £30 game day, you're lucky if you get 22 quid, 23 quid out of that. Then by the time everything's taken off you. It's but that's from our point of view. Some sites will be blessed and they'll be paying a lot less rent than what we are, but unfortunately, it's just the nature of the beast. But at the same time, we got an amazing site as well. Like, it's not just like a wood, there's a lot of history there. There's a lot going on there. So,
Okay, cool. Well, that's definitely an interesting insight. There's a couple of things that I wanted to kind of touch on from that. So from an insurance point of view then, what are the main considerations that you're having to put in place? Obviously, we see the game day brief that we get given, and sometimes the safety brief can sometimes go on and on and on and on. And I know obviously it's a necessary evil. What are the main key factors? So if a site's taking out insurance, what are the main key heads of terms that are the headlamp figures that the insurance company's wanting to sort of get across, really?
So we have a disclaimer that's been proofwritten, so the insurance have approved it. So Joe Blogs will come along, read the disclaimer, and basically they're signing their lives away, So it's that's what we just joke to say, look, lads, sign your lives away. So it's all been proofed by the insurance for them to be happy for us to to continue the activity. So so we're covered in that regard. So, but safety brief wise, obviously you've got to try and be as thorough and then consistent as well is a big thing. You need to be as consistent. Like when I do my safety briefs, I'm pretty much doing word for word. I try not to change too much, because then if there's an issue, I could literally recite it word for word to how it's been. Like, we don't go on and on. I see that some sites that you see some of the pictures and the lads are yawning in the background. We just get the key points across. So we try not to drag it out too much.
On that point, we went to a site called No Man's Land, and they actually were the first place that we've actually seen do this. They actually have the safety brief on a audio recording played through like like a PA system.
Yeah.
So they go make sure we go around the marshals, make sure everybody's listening. Whether they are or not is obviously open to discussion, but it's recited word by word, and actually it's quite engaging, to be fair. So
Best way.
that's obviously something you may all take on board. So
Yeah.
it's quite good, to be fair.
Yeah, it's something that we will look at.
Okay, cool. One of the things I wanted to sort of ask you, and this is always one of the hot topics, because again, it gets changed from site to site and for different power sources, and I'll save the whole HPA debate for a little bit later on in the episode. But from a legal point of view, as a site, what are you mandated to have as either your JAWS limits or your FPS limits for an airsoft replica imitation rifle?
We've not been given any. So
You've not been given any, yeah.
No. So part of the insurance haven't specified. So from a legal point of view on that, the insurance haven't specified anything to us. I know from a paintball side of things, it's a little bit different. So there is sort of like an FPS limit that we work to. So generally with paintballs, we'll be going between 250 and 280 FPS. But we've not been made to do anything with we just go with like the standard, if you like. So generally like 1.18 and so.
Okay, cool, perfect, good. I like to hear that. And I say I'll come back to power sources a little bit later because it's a hot topic in the industry at the moment. In terms of marshals, obviously some of the sites that get really big numbers, obviously sometimes you can, especially on the bigger sites where you have big holes and pockets where there doesn't appear to be marshals around. I know there are, but obviously as you get bigger, I mean, the key question I'm trying to get to here is there like, let's say, for example, you have 100 players on site, is there a legal limit to how many marshals you have to have per set amount of players? Or
So we always work to 1 to 12. So every 12 players, one marshal. We find it works the best. And I know a lot of sites will try and work between 10 and 14, but we'll generally try and work to 12. And then it's important in that regard for bookings. So you get a lot of airsofters that they're either last minute to book on or they don't book on, they just turn up. It's an absolute nightmare from a site owner's point of view. It's the worst because you might allow marshals for the 30 players that have booked on, 34 players that have booked on, and then another 5 turn up, and then you need another marshal then just to keep them figures happy, and then ultimately it keeps everyone happy then because the games are being marshaled properly. But so it's a difficult one. And then also from the other point of that is where you'll marshal it for however many people are booked on, and then you might get a dozen not turn up. And then you're ending up with a spare marshal like you're forking out wages for, really, where you could afford not to.
Yeah, I mean the good old it's event management, effectively, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's one of those things, and I suppose ultimately all the things that go on in the background is kind of just as long as we can kind of keep them out of the way and people don't know about it, and it's just. It's one of those things, and unfortunately, people will be people. I can't say anything. I've picked out the 2 of the last 4, so I'm probably I'm a nightmare for that. In terms of where we're sort of going, obviously with the questions on this, in terms of we obviously touched on there in terms of considerations of play numbers. What sort of limits, or from the size of? In fact, I'll start again. What sort of in acreage? What sort of size site is Rednal?
So originally it was a really small site. So the main field with the building, etc., probably no bigger than 3 acres. Really small. Got a front field which we turned into a bit more of a sort of a kiddies area, and then about 18 months ago, I approached the landowner about taking on a bigger section of land, another roughly 16 acres. Obviously it cost me extra money for that land. Initially it wasn't quite working for the amount of money he wanted. My player numbers wasn't quite there, really. So we left it, and then he contacted me, basically offered me a good deal on it. So I was like, yeah, okay, we'll take it back on. So now we're around about the 20 acre, 21 acre mark, something like of effective gameplay area.
Okay, and again, I'll come back to that top field in a minute, because for anybody who hasn't been to Rednal or not checked it out yet, you do need to check it out. And what he's done with that top field is absolutely outrageous. And I'll come back to that in a little bit in a minute. So So based on 20 acres, then, what sort of playing numbers are you, as a site owner, comfortable with? Not forget the money, forget all that
Yeah.
the other thing. Looking at it from a purist point of view, in terms of getting the most out of the gameplay. What sort of numbers are you sort of happy? What you sort of happy and comfortable with?
So our numbers are generally quite low. I think we're
Mm-hmm.
in one of them sticky situations. We've got a couple of really good sites within sort of half hour, 35 minutes from us. So we've got Outpost in Chester, Jono's place, great place. He's got a great setup there,
Mm-hmm.
and he's got a good player
Yeah.
base. You got Warped down in Wolverhampton. I think Ace Airsoft run events there. I think they do a good job there.
Yeah.
And then there's also a small site similar to ourselves, I suppose, down in Shrewsbury there, not too far away. So we're had a bit of a battle with the players. So generally we're getting about 30 to 40, and it works well. It's a nice
Mm-hmm.
little vibe at
Yeah.
that. We had 60 in at January's first game day, and I was a bit concerned. I
Mm-hmm.
thought, how's it gonna pan out this, because this is a lot more than what we're used to. And the
Mm-hmm.
site took it really well. It took it really well. But 40 is quite a nice number. It just from a marshalling point of view, and just to keep everyone happy, because we got an okay size safe zone, but it's still limited at the moment, as we grow. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's 40 is quite a nice number for us. But the site can easily take the 60, if not more.
Yeah, yeah, good. Again, we're regulars at Outpost, and again, I think if you're playing much more than 20, 25 aside at Outpost, it's the game zones that they have there are kind of nice. And what we love about Outpost is it's actually just you don't stand still. If you're
Yeah,
standing still at Outpost, you're stood in the wrong game zone. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? Like you really, really got to be going at it, and you haven't got to be travel too far from the action. I love the shotgun games, what I call shotgun games, where the objective is dead in front of you, and your base is right behind you, and you're
you
literally
just
just
got to
pushing. Yeah, you
plow
can go
through.
left and right, but you
Yeah,
just go, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Well, you've seen our lads; they just
yeah,
run through a
yeah.
brick
They
wall
want to
if
go
they can.
forwards.
So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, so you mentioned obviously you took on in 2019. And obviously you have paintball. You mentioned on Jono over at Outpost. For those of you that don't know, it's John Evans who's the site owner at Outpost. He's obviously transitioning more so. Obviously, the conversation I had with him was he reckons since COVID that the airsoft and paintball are pretty much on an even keel now, whereas before it was more 70% paintball, 30% airsoft. He's finding it's very much an even keel now. How are you finding that? And are you finding, if that's the case, are you finding that paintballers are making that transition over into airsoft as a sport?
We're obviously, I think we're just a little bit behind the wave of John, or like he's a little bit ahead of us on that. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I can see it. I can see it happening. Obviously, John was doing a lot more walk on paintball as well, where I think
Mm-hmm.
that's dropped off quite a lot now. I think where his airsoft has taken over from his from the walk on stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We're probably still getting more numbers in the rental paintballs than we are for airsoft. But
Mm-hmm.
hopefully it will pick up. It will pick up. But yeah, so currently airsoft is still paintball rentals is still the predominant you know earner, if you like.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. I get that. I can understand that. I mean, what is there anything from you see? Obviously, both sides of the fence. Um, what are the key differences between paintball and airsoft that you see? What in terms of characteristics of the player base on both sides of the fence, and um, do you feel because obviously paintball with their markers and things like that for a long time have been actually exceptional in terms of the technology. Are you kind of seeing the airsoft technology kind of either overtake that, or are they two completely different things?
Yeah, I think from our point of view, it's totally different because we've never really wandered into the world of owner gunners with paintball. It's always been rentals. We've
Hmm.
never really had the player base to play owner gunner paintball at Rednal. So from I don't know really, it's yeah, it's not really something I can comment on. I know the airsoft, obviously the airsoft stuff's coming on leaps and bounds, and we show our rental guys. So we get a group of rentals come in. I always show them the airsoft stuff. I say, lads, fancy
Yeah.
coming back for the game of airsoft? Look at the guns that you can use, and they're all like, oh yeah, and we do get a lot of that. So we've had father sons that have started playing airsoft now on a regular basis that initially come to play paintball. What you will find is that especially like father sons, the youngsters prefer the airsoft mainly because it just doesn't hurt as much. Just doesn't hurt as much.
Yeah, I mean, we've actually got a couple of young lads that come to Rednal quite a bit. Young Callum and Charlie, and I think they really get into the whole. They love wearing camo and stuff, kind of the rigs and stuff that we've got here. I don't know if it's a Call of Duty kind of crossover and stuff like that, but there seems to be a lot more characterization, I suppose, for the kids, I suppose. But
yeah,
it goes from there. But
definitely a Call of Duty generation.
Definitely. I'll openly admit I'm trash. I'm absolutely trash at COD, so we won't even go into that. In terms of, we spoke about Rednal, and obviously the great opportunity that it has been a former RAF base. Did you say Second World War? Was it original origins?
Yeah. So it was. I think it was active from about April 42 till April 46. It was only 4 years. It was. I think it was used predominantly as a training base, and then they did bring some of the injured back in 44 to Rednal, but it's predominantly just a training base. But
and you mentioned you've got the control tower as one of the main features, and I promise you I will get on that roof one day.
As it froze, is it, bud?
It's fine. It'll just be the thing. If it's frozen, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. It'll catch up. We'll start that section again. You touched on before that you've got the control tower, and I promise you I will get on that roof. What other special features? So if I've never come across Rednal before, what main features of your site would you say are the most exciting and things that people are worthwhile making a trip for? Because I'll be honest with you, we travel, and most people that we speak to will, most of them will do an hour and a half. So I'm quite sure we can get people over to you. What key features? What special features have we got over at Rednal that would make people want to drive over?
Yeah, so obviously the unique feature is the 2-story control tower. It's pretty cool. It's got a good vantage point over most of the site, of most of the main field. Other key features, there's a few buildings knocking about on the site, and various things, double-decker bus, some wooden huts. But probably since I've had it, trenches seems to have been a bit of a theme. Probably got well over 1.5 kilometers of trenches now knocking about the site. It's I'm at one with my digger. I'm a ground worker by trade, so it just seemed easy, and I love the look of it. I want to keep the site fairly natural. So I want to be a difference to a degree. Obviously, because I'm competing against John O and then competing against other sites. So I want to be different. But and it's cost effective for me to build a site that's cool looking. I can do it all by myself, basically, or a lot of the work, just myself and a machine. So it's Rednal's. It's pretty specialized. To me, it is anyway.
Well, again, we'll go back to last week's episode. Cookie Mustang said one of his favourite sites in the UK, and he went there yesterday. Because we're recording this on Monday. The Sunday yesterday, Cookie Mustang went to No Man's Land, and he said the trench network they have there really makes their site. And I genuinely feel that if from the feedback that I get from our lads, I trust our lads. They're very knowledgeable in the airsoft world, and they come back to me and say that trench network, especially now it's overgrown,
starting to mature,
and it's filled itself out. It looks absolutely sensational. I think you posted a picture the other day of kind of like the actual. It basically looks like a labyrinth of trenches as well, and I think that's an absolutely sensational aerial view of that. And it's an in thing, and it is very much an airsoft thing. I think Trent sees, especially from that the war games point of view, especially from a reenactment point of view, being able to sneak, and I suppose it gives everything a little bit for snipers, something for a bit of CQB. Ideal for a skirmish game, really, and especially if the lads get to know the map and the layout of those trenches. Obviously, it's a much sort of a sneaky advantage, really. So,
one of my favorite games, to be honest. We played an evening game, probably like September, and we were on that top section, on that top field. I was playing, I wanted to play. It was, moonlight shining down, and we were on that top field there, in and out the trenches in the dark. It felt so good, felt so real. It was really, really, really good. One of my favorite ever games of Airsoft, that particular game.
No, good. Like I say, I'm gutted the couple of occasions that the lads have been over to you now. I've missed out on, and I promise you I will be there. And I'll definitely give it a go and things like that. And we've got a couple of other things that we're trying to work on in the background for you as well. So as a side, Tony, what are your thoughts and beliefs on power limits, FPS, gels, and striking that balance between player comfort and just getting on with it? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's finding a happy medium. It's finding a happy medium because we're trying to introduce, especially the younger, the youngsters into it. Obviously, for the older chaps, it's a little bit different. But yeah, trying to keep it happy and fun for the youngsters. But personally, I think it could hurt a little bit more. From a player's point of view, I think if it was hurting a little bit more, I think it'd be a little bit more enjoyable, especially for me, anyway.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Most of the places we go to will always run on sort of 350 max. We do go to Phoenix. We started to go to Phoenix, and they go up to sort of 370. But obviously, that's the right at the upper limit for a fully automatic. That is obviously based on a 0.2. We're the same. We all have the opportunity to wrap up if you don't need to. Obviously, plate carriers, helmets, face masks, all that sort of stuff. You all have opportunity to do so, and
you can protect yourself.
To be honest, you've just built a trench network. You've got to have some sort of deterrent for popping your head up unnecessarily and things like that. I mean, that's just the part and parcel of it. And going home with a few strawberries on your back and on the fleshy bits, that's all part and parcel of it. They're the ones where you come and work on a Monday and go, ooh, look at this one. So I agree. It's what we sign up for. We all sign up for the agreement for somebody to shoot a solid projectile at us up to 500 feet a second. So they're definitely going to hurt and stuff like that, really. So on that note, then, we do see this banded around and things like that. Can you go through for me what's your chrono process? Because we see some sites that are chronoing on 0.2s because they feel, well, they've from experience probably got people that have been chronoing on saying, oh yeah, I'm using 0.2s, but then going out into the field with a 2.8 or a 0.3 BB. I'm assuming you chrono on the weight that a player is using. Is that right?
Or? So our chrono, it gives us the option to flick through it. I always work on joules. It's the easiest thing for me to get my head around. Rather than swapping through, the chrono itself changes it. So if they're on 2.8, you put that on 2.8, and then it just gives you your joules. And I always just work on the joules. So for your ARs and anything else, is like 1.18. DMRs 1.6 and snipers 2.4. So we just use that as and because it'll chrono back, it'll go back to 0.2s on the chrono. So it does the joules. So I just work on the joules instead. For me personally, it's the easiest way. You're not making mistakes then.
Well, it's just safety as well, isn't it? We could sit here and go all the way through it. But if you're chronoing on 0.2s and then somebody goes out, especially with sort of HPA and stuff like that with the dual creep and just decides they're going to use a 3.2, they're going to be over the joules limit, aren't they? Or the joules limit. It's just it's nonsensical. But we'll kind of
Yeah,
Go for that.
once we've chronoed them as well, will zip tie everyone's. Even if it's HPA, we'll zip tie the reg. Zip tie the rifle. Like so, everyone gets a color coded zip tie, and so we just know.
Hmm.
And if anyone goes around the site and said someone such and such is running hot, or that one stings a lot, like
Hmm.
we can go over, we can check if they've got no zip tie on their gun, then they obviously haven't taken that through chrono, and we'll have words. But it's never happened, so we've
Yeah,
been fortunate.
yeah, yeah. No, no. And again, I think it very, very rarely does, as long as you're doing chrono correctly. I mean, I have touched on this previously. We went to, and I think the player base kind of get harshly dealt. I think there's a lot of people that can just. We went to a site in Essex called AP Plantation, and they do get serious numbers. We're talking 250 on a standard Sunday. And the way they do chrono is, look, you all know the rules. The rules are this: there's a chrono over there. It is your responsibility to make sure that your gun is kind of under the limit.
Yeah,
We will be out. Every single marshal has
chrono. Yeah,
a chrono with them. They've got
mm,
sacks full of BBs or whatever weight they want to use. And
yeah,
if you're over, you're gone. Like that is it. And they are out testing all the time. Like literally, you'd be just coming out of a firefight, bang, yeah, let me test that, let me test that, let me test
yeah,
that. And there's none of this, oh, he's hot. They are constantly always going round, and that stops that build up in the morning of trying to chrono 250 players. And
yeah.
I think just adding that little bit of trust kind of goes a long way, because again, you know, they're all badgers, aren't they? These airsoft players, they're all proper badgers, and they all love making sure that it's all up to right and kind
Yeah,
of where it is and
yeah,
on that. You touched on HPA. You probably guessed when we all rock up, and most of our lads have all got MTWs and
yeah,
HPA
yeah,
tanks and stuff. Plus Speedy and his little speed softy stuff
yeah,
he loves
yeah.
running. So, um, what you, there's a hot topic going around, obviously, and unbelievably, there's people in the world that believe that HPA is pretty much witchcraft. But as a site owner, obviously, you mentioned that you put tournament locks on
Yeah.
the tanks so people can't update them. Have you got any sort of reduction in joules or FPS for HPA, or are you fully aware, or is your understanding that HPA is just equal power source to AEG or glass blowback?
I just look at that chrono, and if that chrono's saying the number, I just go off that. I don't worry about
Yeah,
if it's AEG, yeah, or HPA. I just look at the chrono.
yeah. You mentioned obviously people say, "Oh, that's stinging a little bit." I think the main thing with HPA is quite often the guns are of a better quality, a better price point, and the hop ups just have the ability to lift a heavier BB. Like I run 3.2s on mine, and I wouldn't even dream of running a 3.2 on any of my AEGs. I just don't think it would have the power or the consistency to do it. Hence why, yeah, they sting a little bit more.
Yeah,
Cause I'm
yeah,
sending, rather than sending a 2.5 out, I'm sending a 3.2.
yeah.
It's a more consistent variable. So if you're not coming to me and saying that hurts, then my gun's not working properly. So that's always the way I look at it from that point of view. So you've obviously had Rednal for
5 years
5 years
now.
now
Yeah,
as we
yeah.
go into 2024. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What what changes do you think would benefit airsoft? What would you like to see in the airsoft world? Not only, let's break it down, because obviously we've all got an ideal world. Let's break it down into short, medium, long term. What sort of? So we'll do that as a three part. So we'll start with short term. What get me words out. What short term changes would you like to see that would benefit the world of airsoft?
It's a difficult one. Like, obviously, it's getting to be a bit of a, as Kicking Mustang was saying, bit of a woke generation almost, where everybody's moaning about something. For me, it's
Mm-hmm.
my pet hate. In my safety brief in the morning, I make it clear, like, if anyone's got any issues with anybody else, speak to me. Nobody shouting across the map. It's my biggest pet hate. Someone yelling across the map to someone else saying, I've hit you, I've done this. So in my safety
Mm-hmm.
brief, I generally say, anybody's got an issue, come and speak to me. I'll deal with it. If I can have a word, or I can get a marshal to test fire such and such, but just come through me. That's what I prefer to do, or through a marshal, should I say. So the morning, stopping people
Yeah.
from morning, it's
I
such.
think, yeah, I get, yeah, I think the key point you mentioned there, obviously, is getting a work thing. And again, this kind of comes to airsoft has become, and again, airsoft is for everybody. And I did an interview with Death Row, another podcast, and he asked me the question that should everybody play the objective? Now, tell me if I'm right or wrong on this. And this comes back to from a moaning point of view, not just necessarily from he's not taking his hits or he's not that, because we all know 95% of the time they're not anywhere near taking a hit because they're dropping short or they've hit a tree and gone left or right. I'm very much of the thing, like if you were a site owner and you spent all week thinking, right, I've got 40 people coming this week, we're going to play this game and we're going to do this. And some people are in airsoft, and it's up to them what they do with it in terms of that. They like doing the LARP side of things. They like doing the techie side of things. They like the cosplay and the slightly slower day out sort of thing.
Yeah.
But do you find it frustrating as a site owner that if you spent all week thinking, right, we're going to play this game mode this week because I've got X amount of players, you've then gone, right, I've got to get this balanced. I can't have all the owner players on one side against the rentals and vice versa.
Yeah.
And then half the people just decide that they're not going to take part in the game. They just kind of sit in a corner over there, sort of thing. Is that how do you sort of manage that? Because obviously, if some of those people just decide that they're just going to sit out or not take part or do whatever, not only are they they're making it difficult for you, but they're also making life horrendous for everybody else that's paying 35 quid, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the opposition as well. There's nothing worse than when you're like, where's the opposition and stuff like that. I mean, you've probably seen our flag when we come on site. It's always play the objective and things like that. That for me is one of the things that I think kind of comes from where some of the moaning comes from. You've got the lads that they want to be part of airsoft and the tech and the guns, the cosplay, all that sort of stuff. But when it actually gets to a point where there's actually some intense gameplay and things like that, they get kind of caught up in the moment. They're hetting up and stuff like that. That for me is one thing I think you tend to find is if you've got 40 players, for example, and 20 on one side and 20 on the other, all solid. We are going to play the objective and intense gameplay. Oh, we mentioned Dan Edwards, Speedy. Obviously, full disclosure, he is a marshal for Craig over at Rednal. He's also a member of the Headless Chicken Squad, but he's also, and he'll probably blow his own trumpet because he loves doing that. He's actually off to Europe to play in the European League of Speedsoft. And he will testify, if you're playing, whether it's 4-a-side, 8-a-side, 3-a-side, 2-a-side, when you've got all those people hell-bent on playing that objective and playing one common goal, that the intensity goes up, the gameplay goes up, but also the level of honour and competitive respect kind of goes up as well. From that point of view. And I suppose from that point of view, what you were saying on that is if we can get everybody agreeing that there's going to do that, that will help. That to no end, I firmly believe. And again, going back to what James was saying last week.
Yeah, keeping the teams balanced so you've got a decent amount of guys that are going to be hard and aggressive against each other. Mm-hmm. And if you do get the few players that are struggling to get into it, that prefers to sit back, then hopefully they're not having a negative effect on the game if you've got it balanced quite well. But we'll wander around the site and we'll try and G people up, and especially if you've got any rentals in that are not really sure, then you'll go and you'll try and give them some tips on, right, guys, you need to be going left here, get around there, trying to help them out, trying to get them to advance forward. We always say, go, especially if you're attacking and you've got a respawn or whatever, there's no reason why to sit back. Just get forward. You're not going to win the game from back in your spawn.
Yeah, that's part of the thing. If I haven't been shot or had to respawn 20, 30 times, 40 times in a game day, I'm not doing my job properly. That's the thing. Yeah, you'll go on, you'll have kill streaks and things like that, but there will have times where, if you've got a bit of a bottleneck and a bit of a hurt locker section of the thing, you're only going to clear it by pushing. And if everybody pushes together and I think stacking is the term. Then it's
Yeah.
the best way to do it, and you're going to have to take your hits. It's all part and parcel of the game, and you kind of go. And that's the best part of having unlimited respawns, I suppose.
Yeah.
You can kind of keep going. So we've covered short term. Medium might be a bit in the thing. So give me what long term changes or developments would you like to see in the world of airsoft?
Well, we're just continuing to try and engage the youngsters. We're always trying to press it. So if we've got a kids party, we'll be like saying, right, guys, you want to look at this maybe next time for your 13th birthday, your 12th birthday. And same with schools. We really pushing it with the schools. Like yesterday, we had a group of 23 in, so from a local school just playing airsoft. So if we can continue growing the numbers through the youngsters, then from a business point of view, we've got longevity there, and so is the sport. Yeah, so it's the youngsters was our key, to be fair.
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing. I mean, you touched on the future generations. My background is education and soft skills. For those that don't know what that is, that's basically skills that they're like life skills, employability skills, things like that. And for me, I've always been a massive advocate that the airsoft is key in three main areas: communication, teamwork, and leadership, which if you ask anybody, they are the three core pillars of employability, soft skills that schools are always benchmarked against. And there's actually in education and sports development, there's something called the Gatsby benchmarks. And pretty much I think Airsoft has the opportunity to learn and develop not only children but young adults coming into the sport dramatically on that, because again, as you've touched on there, you've got to be able to push the objective, you've got to have the teamwork, you've got to have that communication, whether that's shouting positive player left or right, or
Yeah.
what gets me so many times on the airsoft field is you'll have somebody in the background turning around and going, "There's somebody by that tree." There's about 80 trees.
Yeah.
So it's just having that understanding kind of what's in front. And then more often than not, it's leadership. And I don't mean management and things like that. Leadership, you can't teach leadership. Although it's a skill, it's a mindset of kind of wanting to lead by example, lead from the front, and not expecting people to do things that you're not necessarily willing to do yourself. So
Yeah.
I actually think you're onto a massive thing there in terms of that. And I'm glad that you actually said that it was a sport, because I've had a few people tell me that it's definitely not a sport.
Oh.
But then I've also had I actually went to college with a chap who actually worked for Sports England.
Okay,
and
yeah.
I've had it clarified in writing that a sport does not need a governing body to be a sport. There you go.
Oh, there you go.
So it's definitely a sport. So there's changes in terms of where we're at with that. We kind of half touched on this earlier on in the pod, but what message have you got for anybody that never heard of Rednal before, possibly looked at and think, "Oh, it's a bit of a trek. I wonder if it's actually a site that's all about gameplay and things like that." What message would you have for the airsoft community that A, haven't been to Rednal, and B, are thinking of coming over? What message have we got?
Yeah, so well, the site. If you look at the site will speak for itself to a degree. You'll see it. It looks good. I'm biased. I'm massively biased, and I'm proud as well. Like I feel like the site is quality, and then also you've got the players. So we've got a nice little community growing. So it's got a really good atmosphere. We've got decent players there. They're all willing to help each other. Such and such breaks, they're willing to help. So you've got a key bunch of players that are really, really good to be around. The site's, like I keep saying, the site's just quality. And then obviously me and my missus, we try our best to make your day as good as possible. So as well as the gameplay, the guys are around the site, in and around the sites, they're nice to be around. And I'd like to think me and my missus are quite nice to be around too.
Yeah, they're good. I mean, you probably heard me say last week and the week before that, and I'll say it every week in the future. I mean, it all comes down to the people. You can have the most amazing site in the world, but if you haven't got your heart, your mind and your soul into putting on an amazing experience for your patrons, your customers, people are going to see straight through it. And as I said, disclosure, I've never met Craig. My team have been and played at Rednal a few times, and some of the regulars at Rednal have actually joined the Headless shaking squad. But straight away, it's Craig's attitude to Airsoft and the team and his sight is obviously is evident to see, and I can tell that in the 45 minutes I've just been talking to him that the passion that you have for the place oozes through it. So that's a credit to you and yourself. So
thank you.
That's hats off to you. In terms of to wrap it up, in terms of where we're going to go with this. In terms of when you're looking for guidance, obviously you mentioned locally you've got outposts quite close to you. You've got Ace that are quite close to you. I have my own views on Ace, but we'll leave that there. In terms of other sites nationally, which ones do you see and think, do you know what, that looks pretty cool in terms of what they've got or what they're trying to do in terms of that scene that's quite innovative? Which ones have you noticed?
Yeah, you've mentioned it, like No Man's Land. I follow them on their socials. They're doing great stuff there. Quality sites, quality. And it's got the vibe that I like. Like it'll say trenches, and I've never been there. I've never, we've spoken. The problem for me is I don't get to get out very often because I'm running the sites. I've got to be at sites, so I don't get to go to many places. But I have mentioned it to the guys that we should make an effort to get up to No Man's Land. So I watch that quite closely. Yeah, I follow that.
Mm-hmm. Another one for you to look at. We did a poll middle of last year. I know we did one at the end, but I'll come back to that a little bit later. We did one middle of last year, and No Man's Land was up there. But Dirty Dog, we haven't been yet, but I love following their sort of stuff in terms of that sort of stuff. That looks pretty cool. That little area they've got that looks like shipment on Call of Duty with all the shipping containers and stuff like that. That looks sick. That does. So but then you've obviously got you've got the USP that they haven't, which is the fact that you're an RAF base. So fair play to you on that. So in terms of episode 3, that brings us pretty much to the close. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Craig, for joining me. Next week we'll be back with you're more than welcome, mate. And if you ever want to come back on, you just drop me a message and I'll have you on week in, week out if you want. We'll get you a regular slot. How about that? If you like what you are watching, what you are hearing, depending on where you're actually picking this podcast up, please remember to like and subscribe. We're here to share all things positive in the world of Airsoft. If there's anything you want to hear from us, any guests, anything you want to see, hit us up in the comments. Drop us a DM. We'll try and make it happen. Next week, I will be back with yet more amazing guests. And ladies and gentlemen, please remember, always play the objective. Thank you very much. This has been the Airsoft podcast with the Headless Chicken Squad and the Don. Good night, good evening. God bless.